What type of job seems appealing but ends up being quite disappointing? Story 1. A friend of mine is a forensic scientist, and whenever he's on dating apps, it's the only thing people want to talk about. His work is actually pretty technical and involves a lot of routine tasks. Story 2. After 4 years in the military, my biggest complaint was the lack of sleep and the irregular schedule. First job after that was a security guard. I couldn't believe how lucky I was, getting paid to stand there and do nothing. Until that job, I had not realized how much I would hate being bored. Story 3. Working at a flower shop is just like any other retail position, but everyone assumes it's more enjoyable than it really is. Assisting families in selecting flowers for funerals is definitely not the fun part either. Answer: I don't care that you're saying you want azaleas. The email specifically said rhododendrons. Yes, I get it's your special day, Janice, but I can't source 34 brand new centerpieces in the next 2 hours. Yeah, well, next time communicate with your bridesmaids better. Yes, I was insinuating there will be a next time because you seem lovely. Story 4. I work as a scientist. I'm not sure if people generally view that profession as enjoyable, but I believe they expect it to be filled with more eureka moments and a lot less. I have to manually process this data for 600 hours before I can start analyzing it. Story 5. Big law. The pay is incredible. The work is unbelievably stressful and exhausting. A lot of people tell me that they also work a lot, but constantly being mentally on for 50, 70 hours a week, tilled 40-60 in billables, analyzing deals in the tens and hundreds of millions of dollars around a bunch of cutthroat, brilliant, high-functioning type personalities who are ready to pounce at any mistake is a whole different level of mental exhaustion that sucks away your ability to do anything, enjoy anything in the time that you do have outside of work. You end up spending so much money for shortcuts just to make life work out, living close by the office, food delivery, cleaning, dry cleaning, the grand gestures when you can't reliably be there for loved ones, etc., that you don't actually pocket nearly as much as you think you do despite the high salaries. I'm so glad I've finally made it out after many years of grinding and win of counsel. I still get paid reasonably well, but the hours are dope. Story 6. Nursing. Became a nurse to help people and do cool medical shit, and I did do that. I also got yelled at by patients and other staff, spit on, hit, choked, demeaned, worked 16+ hours sometimes, and frequently missed important family events while working on weekends. Story 7. A travel blogger job seems appealing with its promise of adventure and free trips, but it often turns out disappointing due to constant deadlines, unstable income, and the pressure to always perform for social media. Story 8. Sales specialist at a motorcycle dealership. People always tell me I have their dream job. Like, no, I really don't. It's still sales. And it's a hard and brutal job with long hours and sometimes little pay when you don't sell, especially when you can't control interest rates. Story 9. When you work a shitty retail or food service job, being slow can seem appealing, but over time, it erodes your soul. Time slows down to a crawl, and over long enough periods of time, the culture will shift to where everyone treats the job as waiting out the clock, and all forms of work are interruptions of your scheduled phone time. It can destroy a culture, and that's before you start talking about losing hours and whatnot. Story 10. While investigative journalism can provide thrills and a sense of making a great contribution to society, it often comes with challenges such as high pressure, danger, and sometimes a lack of recognition or protection from the press and the public. Story 11. I would think any first responder job. Yeah, it's cool you get to be seen as the heroes of society, but with all the messed up things you have to see, like you're constantly seeing people go through the worst moment of their lives, I would imagine that gets to you. Story 12. I'll say with a caveat that I personally enjoy it, but have seen a lot of colleagues become disillusioned after finally making it. Doctor. A lot of people see it a prestigious career that earns tons of money and is rather cushy. The truth is quite different. Patients can be, and I'd even say it's 50%, the rudest, overly demanding, and entitled people you can work with. Some treat you with respect as they are the ones who actively need your services and recognize you have years upon years of knowledge and experience under your belt. But many, if not most, couldn't give a damn and will have a duality about them where they both want you to help them, but also think you don't know anything and will dismiss what you say, especially if it isn't a quick pill fix, along the lines of, you need to change your life in some way. Also, medicine is a dirty job. People think of the shirt and tie doctor in the white coat. Yeah. Some people like to pretend they are working in some office setting. The reality is, your tie will get soaked in random bodily juices during CPR. You'll get blood and feces on your nice shoes. And some guy having a psychotic break will grab at your tie and have a nice lever by which to try to serious hurt you. But I still really like my job. It allows me to flex my critical thinking, keeps me active, and does give me a feeling that I did something meaningful day to day. But a lot of my younger peers come out of training ready to quit because they simply didn't know what the job was going to be like. What you see before clinicals, either on TV or what you're exposed to during high school/college, is limited and not a good representation of the job itself. Story 13. I took environmental science with a focus on climate science. I was going to save the world. Nah, I'm watching it burn. And every time I see a news article about slowing North Atlantic currents or permafrost explosions in Siberia, my climate depression increases. Being able to recognize and understand the subtle progression of the feedback loops is a curse. Story 14. I often see graphic design touted as an escape route for people who find themselves wanting to change career. I honestly think it's pretty irresponsible of the people who run these courses promising that, as it's a really difficult industry to get into, and even if you can get into it, it's then really hard to get the fun creative work you were picturing when you signed up. I'm sure a lot of people end up disappointed. Story 15, architecture. Architecture is a very weird medium to be in comparing to other art or science professions because it's kind of both, or either depends on which side of the trade you're doing. But fundamentally, it's an odd place to be. Let's say you're a painter. You think of stuffs, then you paint it. Same if you're a sculptor. But you rarely, if not ever, see an architect going out and physically build his/her own shit. It relies on others to make it happen, and in the end, you're actualizing someone else's dream, using someone else's money, relying on someone else's labor. So you can take pride in being a part of it or not. The pay is relatively low if you're not licensed. Hard to break 100K unless you're deep-rooted in a company in a big city like NY. Long work hours are expected because it's a noble tradition in architecture, from academic level to professional level. Lots of planning and deadlines are always around the corner. At the end, you're in the service industry. Instead of a 5-minute deadline for a cheeseburger at a drive-thru, it's a 6 months deadline for a design, or a set of drawings or construction or STH. There's always something. Story 16. Salesmen selling certain things, such as heavy machinery or large computer systems, often takes out clients for drinking. So they basically can get drunk and get paid, but it's not without risk. Many of them end up as alcoholics of some degree. Story 17. People say make your hobby your job. I enjoyed writing simple computer programs. I got some qualifications and then a job as a programmer at a retailer. The programming was boring. My boss wanted everything done by the end of yesterday. The other people in the IT section were vile and bullying. I gave it up. Story 18. For me personally, it was working from home. It was very, very lonely. And I didn't have the self-discipline to not get distracted by things I had to do around the house that felt like I never left it, and could never escape work. And no, you don't save on childcare 99% of the time, unless your kids are older or you're just a shitty parent. Story 19. Don't know if this is still the case among the youth, but when I was in school, everyone I knew wanted to be a wedding event planner. Baffled the hell out of me, because up close it's a miserable job. Every wedding has at least one awful person in the planning process. If it's not the bride, it's one of the moms. If it's not them, it's one of the vendors. I think what a lot of people don't realize is that a wedding planner doesn't actually pick much about the wedding. They are basically glorified project managers there to get everything running and take the blame when vendors fuck up. Upscale weddings can involve a dozen different vendors, each specializing in a specific part of the process. Flowers, table linens, the space, the furniture, the catering, the cake, the alcohol, the lights, the music, etc. All of these can be completely different vendors. You're less picking anything versus trying to get something tolerable within the client's budget and the vendor's limitations. Add to that, forget you have weekends. When do weddings happen? Weekends. In addition, weddings are incredibly seasonal. There are months where you have almost no work, then months where you have zero free time. What the seasons are really depends on where you live. Example. Here in the deep south, you do not have weddings June, July, because who the fuck wants to get married outside when it's 105 degrees? Source. I worked in events for a hotel, and my spouse does wedding floral for a living. Story 20. Working in the TV film industry. Some days you get to do some cool stuff, but most days it's long, hard, exhausting work. Thankfully, in the last few years, our days have mostly shorted to 12-hour days of work. But I still vividly remember the 17, 18-hour days 5 times a week. Plus, with rotating schedules, you never get used to sleeping until you are off a show. You get Fridays where your day starts at 6 p.m., and then when get off 14 hours later have to turn back over for a 6 a.m. report on Monday. I love what I do, but the people who pretend it must be the easiest job don't really understand all the work that goes into the entertainment industry. Story 21. Nursing. It does have its perks and benefits, but it used to be way better. We are dealing with much sicker patients and much more mental illness. We are expected to care for the same amount of patients, and oftentimes we cannot depend on support staff to do much for individual patients because they are running ragged from having too many patients assigned. Also, if we ask them to do a task and they forget or can't because they are too busy, it falls on our license if that patient wasn't turned or the blood sugar wasn't done. The violence and emotional abuse is unmanageable. The benefits are getting worse and things taken away left and right. The burden of responsibility is crushing and spills over into your days off. You begin to dread work on your days off. I showed up one weekend shift and without any training or asking me to do it, I was assigned as charge nurse. The night charge handed off to me and said, "You'll be fine, you've got this," and I also was assigned patients. I had no idea how to be charged. Story 22, social media manager. I worked in the hospitality sector. I would do marketing research, content creation, video, photo, graphic design, website design, development, scheduling posts, copywriting, profile management, Google reviews, Yelp, etc., replying to customer messages on all platforms, analytic data collection to feed marketing research, and then maybe enter the businesses in for awards or grants. I spent 8 hours a day doing it, no bother. Even if I'm at home and on my social media privately, I can't not see what people are trying to sell, product or way of life, or what trend they are hopping on. It's handy since I can spot a scam, but also a balls, because I don't really enjoy social media like normal. Story 23, accounting, especially public accounting where similar to lawyers you have to have billable hours. The pay is crap because you are expected to work unpaid overtime during tax season, which occurs 2x a year. You are working 50, 80 HRS for half the year. Many work on the weekends too. You have to read laws and apply them, and many of the times the instructions for the returns are so unclear that many accountants just have to rely on judgment. It's pretty stressful, and we have to meet tight deadlines. My friend had to set her wedding date outside of tax season just so I can make it. Also, the CPA exam is just as difficult as the bar exam. Nowadays, if you're not certified, you can still make partner, so it's not as limiting as it was before if you don't have your CPA. Story 24, broadcast TV news producer here. You get all sorts of access to very important people and quickly become jaded at the fact that for every good business person, elected official, politician, etc., there are way more who could care less about anything but their bottom line. Also, 99% of things on TV that look glamorous aren't. Most people put on a different persona the moment the cameras are live. The pay is trash, the stress is high, and no one watches TV anymore. Story 25. I signed up for trucking school thinking, I don't mind driving. I can drive trucks. It's just like driving a car, but bigger. Man, no, the fuck it is not. I'm about 30 hours out of 60 hours into the driving portion of school. I test out for my CDL in 2 weeks, and I am so fucking stressed every second I'm in that truck. There is not one thing about driving a truck that is even remotely easy. It requires so much micromanagement of so many small different things. I'm really hoping I'm just inexperienced. And as more experience comes, things become more natural and second nature. But for now, my mind and also body are always on 10, constantly analyzing, constantly making micro adjustments, constantly stressed out. I knew it would be more challenging than I thought in my head, but I had no clue it would be this difficult. I have gained so much respect for truckers. There is no slack for them in any way, yet they are the backbone that keeps society functioning. Story 26. Testing video games. You're under pressure looking for someone else's mistakes. And when you find them, nobody's happy about it. But if you don't find them, you're liable to get fired. You can't enjoy playing because the stakes are too high, and the amount of rote work, recording everything you do into a system, is tedious as hell. Then on top of all that, you can't have fun playing games at home anymore either because it feels like work. And these days they devalue the job and keep trying to automate it to justify worse and worse pay. Story 27. Modeling. A lot of people get into it for the hype, but it's actually quite an uncomfortable job, changing in front of people, walking, standing in heels that are too big or too small for 10+ hour days, and never knowing when your next job/paycheck is going to come or how much you'll actually make in a year. Story 28. A lot of people think that because they like watching films that they would enjoy making films. Those people do not realize the all-encompassing amount of work and stress that goes into actually making a film and how precious little creative input most people on a set actually get to have. Story 29. Librarian. I tell people it's my job and they say that must be chill or I'd love to read all day. It's basically just another customer service job where I'm either checking books in, out, or showing people how to do basic computer things. But we also attract a lot of folks with mental health problems or substance abuse issues, and that can lead to some tense situations. Story 30. Anything in the entertainment industry. I know a lot of people who do that shit, and I'm not talking entry-level positions. They're in credits. 70% are miserable and clamoring all day, every day for little to no pay, and the other 30% are manipulative assholes who live to pull others down so they may go further in their own career. Even celebrities hate it. I'm seeing more and more work for a few years, collect their bag, North Dakota, get TF away from those people. Story 31. Social work can be very fulfilling but has so much burnout. You're taking care of everyone else, and there's not many people, if anyone, taking care of you. Being trauma-informed means you understand why people behave in a certain way and do your best to be helpful and caring, while setting boundaries. But we rarely get that in return. Self-care is important, but it seems like so many people expect a person to be healthy all on our own. People need people. We should nurture each other, but I always hear people talking about go to therapy. Yeah, we do that, but damn, sometimes you just need a person to love and care for you in a way that helps level you out or lets you feel like you're important to someone besides a client. When people constantly take self-care, can't pour in to replace it nearly quick enough. Story 32. After COVID sort of ended, I had a great idea of getting a part-time job in a restaurant for fun, specifically doing dishes. The thought of getting out and stretching and meeting new people, etc., seemed appealing. After about 2 months of the same free burger every night, noticing the same fork and plate coming through my station, which I always got very clean, I realized that shit is hard work and probably not worth the compensation. Story 33. Retail. I despise being in retail. The customers lack any kind of common sense. Most don't understand English, so I can't properly assist them. Management keeps us understaffed or drives new hires away by throwing them to the wolves without proper training. Management expects so much from one person. I can't wait for the day I leave. Story 34. I worked at FedEx Ground for about a month. At first, it didn't seem that bad. You spend the day unloading trailers and putting packages on a conveyor belt. Easy enough. All there is to it. Sometimes the line gets backed up, so you get to chill and chit-chat with a coworker until it picks up again. Downside is that they will often make you do an entire trailer by yourself and that get on your ass for not working fast enough. The worst are the drop frame trailers. They are smaller and don't take as long as the straight rail trailers, but I hated them more because it's a lot more physically exhausting and a lot of things you need are often out of reach. Story 35. Journalism. Duty, passion, and exclusive access to places. Except most news outlets are owned by greedy corporations with shareholders expecting more profits. Every editorial decision is driven by gaining audience, and thus the important yet boring stuff doesn't get covered. Story 36. Publicist, particularly in music. I jumped into the world of music PR enthusiastically because I was a music journalist at the time and was very good at making connections, so it was naturally good for me. Of course, the pros are that you get to work with a lot of music artists and go to cool events and do things that everybody thinks is so glamorous. But on the back end, it's hours and hours of being told no, then trying to explain to an artist why they're not getting the media they feel they should get, being blamed because an artist's trajectory isn't the way everyone around them needs it to be, even when the artist isn't doing their own job to get there, or other members of their team are trash. Of course, if the artist does well, the artist is applauded for doing it all by themselves. But if the artist doesn't do well, then it's because they had a shitty team. It can be very defeating when an artist doesn't do well during a campaign. You could do all the right things and make all the right calls. But if the press isn't feeling that, you're just out. I was very good at my job and had several people I worked with early on go on to be very big stars. So I'm definitely proud of the work I did. It was just draining. Since I transitioned into doing project management and YouTube channel management, I've been a lot more mentally healthy and happy.